These were contest winners. They'd come down with the morning team, and you can just imagine, with Jim in charge, what fun we had then. We'd be on the air at 6 a.m. Vancouver time, off the air at 9 a.m. Vancouver time. My main job wasn't really to do the sports part of the show, it was to get the Caesars ready for 9 o'clock. Start the party and get going. What Jim would do is he opened the door down there to any aspiring artists, musicians, and whatever. And this young, attractive lady, her name was Linda Davis. Nobody knew her name, nobody knew who she was, but she sang Desperado that just stole Jim's heart. And he had her on every morning, and she was only supposed to appear one time. But Jim being Jim, he wanted to express his affection and thoughts, and they became good friends. And I'll be damned if about a year later, maybe a little later than that, 2 years later, Reba McEntire is playing the Coliseum, and her warm-up act is Linda Davis, and who's emceeing it? Jim Fraser. He figured that one out.
I don't believe it.
The other fun story I know about Jim, of course, and those who worked with him in those days would be aware of his habit of ignoring parking tickets. Like, he'd always be late getting to work. He was on the air at 6 on Ash Street, and he'd usually get there about 10 after, quarter after. He'd park the car in front of Ash because he was late and running, and the parking meters never clicked in till 9. And he figured, well, I'm off the air at 5 to 9. I'll just scoot out, get the car, and no problem. Well, there was a problem because he always lost track of time, and more times than enough he'd be called in to the program director to review the show, and I'm not exaggerating, he showed me in his glove box once the parking tickets that he had collected, and it was overflowing to the point where he eventually put them in the trunk of his car. And they did catch him, they caught up to him, and I think he went on an installment plan with the police department, but he had more parking tickets than you can imagine. And the only other time, I know they got in a little bit of trouble, and that was, this is my wife Deidre, Dee, and remember how Jim used to love to do George Burns?
Yeah.
He'd get the cigar in his mouth, and you couldn't tell the difference between George Burns and Jim. Anyway, we were shopping one afternoon in Richmond, and I'll be damned if there wasn't a life-sized cardboard cutout of George Burns. And I said, we gotta get that. We have to have it. Went in to negotiate with the owner of the store, and no, he wasn't gonna sell it because it was a come on, an advertising thing. We did get it. We gave it to him at a party one night. And he really became attached to it to the point where George would travel with him in the car. And then he discovered HOV lanes. Perfect. The two of us were going to where we wanted, and then of course we got caught doing that, and that backfired a bit. I mentioned earlier about his doing his boat reports from his living room or balcony. He wasn't alone in that. Al Davidson from NW, remember, had the Sea Watch? And that was Jim's, I wouldn't say idol, but he patterned his Sea-Watch show after Al Davidson's. And again, he'd be running late to get his Sea-Watch show on the air. And he'd be listening on the radio, George, to Al Davidson talking about the waves and the weather and wherever he was. And Jim would say, damn it, he's beat me again. And he'd pull up to wherever they parked to get into their boats, and he'd hear, Jimmy, I'm over here. It was Al Davidson having a cup of coffee on a dock. He wasn't even out there. So one final story, I'll let my wife tell this one, because I don't remember a lot about it for some reason, which you'll understand after you hear it.
Hi everybody, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Jim came down to stay with Greg and I in Palm Desert for a week, many years ago. And he said to Greg, oh, this is just going to be so wonderful. I'm looking forward to relaxing and there'll be lots of sun and blah, blah, blah. So I wake up in the morning and I hear this great kerfuffle going on in the garage, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? Sure enough, I stumble out there. Greg and Jim are there. Jim's frantically pumping up putting air in the tires of the bicycles. And Greg is frantically looking for the grapefruit picker, which was a tall stick with a little scoop on the end. Basket, yeah. And anyway, I'm standing there and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, oh God, what now? And the two of them fire out of the garage on these little bicycles, singing, hi-ho, hi-ho. And so after work we go with the grapefruit pickers and the little baskets, like little girl baskets on the front of the bicycles. Two great big guys on little bicycles with little baskets, and off they go. And they came back about 15 minutes later with their baskets full, and they thought they'd died and gone to heaven. It was all fresh picked grapefruit. They got into the kitchen. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. Greg pulls out the juicer. Jim is frantically cutting all the grapefruits into jugs. And of course, there's the third jug that has the vodka in it, right? So they're in their pool attire with the two jugs of totally fresh squeezed grapefruit and the jug of the vodka, and they go out to the pool. And I think to myself, well, I better probably go into the kitchen because it's probably a sticky mess, which it was. And then I get changed and I'm going out to the pool. And lo and behold, Jimmy comes racing by me at breakneck speed. And I said, Jimmy, are you okay? And he goes, oh, it must have been something I've eaten. And I said to him, it's probably got nothing to do with the 3 gallons of salty dogs the two of you have just consumed, right? So, anyway, and it was just such a fun time that we had. It was just the 3 of us. We had such a fun time. He was such a good guy and such a fun guy. And as a girl with some Prosecco, I'd just like to say, here's to James Neil Fraser. Cheers.
We just want to give a salute to the ladies. It's very important that we acknowledge the ladies because for obvious reasons we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. But we may or may not enjoy ourselves. Okay, anyway, take care. Okay, bye.
Cheers.